My name is Serafina. I am 28 years old, and 3 months ago, I discovered that my own sister tried to drug me on my wedding day. What started as the most beautiful moment of my life turned into a nightmare that would tear apart everything I believed about family loyalty. The woman who was supposed to be my maid of honor, who I had trusted with my deepest secrets since childhood, had slipped something into my champagne flute during our private sister moment before I walked down the aisle. But here is the thing about betrayal. Sometimes it reveals truths that change everything forever. Before we dive into this wild family revenge story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping family drama stories. Trust me, you will want to stay until the very end because what my sister did next will absolutely blow your mind. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The morning of my wedding started like something out of a fairy tale. After 2 years of planning and saving every penny, Marcus and I had finally reached our dream day. The venue was a gorgeous estate overlooking the Pacific coast, decorated with white roses and gold accents that caught the morning sunlight perfectly. $80,000 might seem excessive to some people, but this wedding represented everything Marcus and I had worked toward together. My sister Evangeline had been acting strange for weeks leading up to the ceremony. She kept making odd comments about how I was moving too fast and how Marcus seemed different lately. I brushed off her concerns as pre-wedding jitters that many maid of honors experience. After all, Evangeline had always been the protective older sister, even though she was only 2 years my senior. The bridal suite was buzzing with activity when Evangeline appeared with 2 glasses of champagne around 10 in the morning. "Sister tradition," she announced with that familiar smile I had trusted my entire life. "Just you and me before all the chaos begins." The gesture felt sweet and intimate, exactly what I needed to calm my nerves. We sat together on the velvet settee, talking about childhood memories and how proud our parents would have been if they were still alive to see this day. Evangeline had raised me after our parents died in a car accident when I was 16, sacrificing her own college plans to work double shifts so I could finish high school and eventually earn my business degree. "To new beginnings," she toasted, clinking her glass against mine. I took several sips of the champagne, savoring both the bubbles and this precious moment with my sister. But within minutes, something felt terribly wrong. The room started spinning slightly, and my thoughts became fuzzy around the edges. I assumed it was just wedding day nerves combined with drinking on an empty stomach. "You look pale." Evangeline observed her voice carrying a strange undertone I could not quite identify. "Maybe you should sit down for a few more minutes." She guided me to the couch, her hands steady and sure, almost as if she had been expecting this reaction. My bridesmaids started arriving, and somehow I managed to pull myself together enough to get through hair and makeup. But the foggy feeling persisted, and I kept stumbling over simple words during our rehearsal of the ceremony processional. My maid of honor attributed it to nerves, but something in her eyes looked almost satisfied when I struggled to focus. The photographer captured what should have been magical getting ready moments, but I felt like I was watching everything through a thick glass window. When it came time for the first look with Marcus, I nearly tripped walking down the stairs in my heels. He caught me concerned, asking if I was feeling all right. "Just overwhelmed with happiness," I managed to say, though internally I was fighting waves of confusion and mild nausea. Marcus looked unconvinced, but chalked it up to the emotional magnitude of our wedding day. During our private vow exchange before the ceremony, I struggled to remember the words I had practiced hundreds of times. Marcus noticed my difficulty and gently prompted me through the more complex sections. His kindness in that moment made me feel even more confused about why I was having such trouble concentrating. It was not until our wedding videographer showed me raw footage 3 weeks later that I saw what really happened. In the background of one shot, while I was distracted talking to my hairstylist, the camera caught Evangeline dropping something small into my champagne glass. She looked around carefully, ensuring no one was watching, then stirred the liquid with her finger before setting it back down exactly where I had left it. The realization hit me like ice water. My own sister had drugged me on my wedding day. But why? What could possibly motivate someone to sabotage the most important day of their sibling's life? The betrayal felt so profound that I spent hours staring at that video footage, hoping I was somehow misinterpreting what my eyes were seeing. Marcus found me crying in our living room that evening, laptop open to the damning footage. When I showed him what I had discovered, his face went through a series of emotions: shock, anger, confusion, and finally, a grim determination that I had never seen before. "We need to figure out why she did this," he said quietly, his hand finding mine. "And we need to make sure she never has the opportunity to hurt you again." That was the moment our investigation began, and what we uncovered would change everything I thought I knew about my family. The days following my discovery felt like living in an alternate reality. Everything I thought I knew about Evangeline, about our relationship, about our shared history, suddenly became questionable. I found myself analyzing every interaction we had ever had through this new lens of betrayal, looking for signs I had missed. Marcus suggested we approach this methodically rather than confronting Evangeline immediately. "If she was willing to drug you at your own wedding, there might be more to this story," he reasoned. "We need to understand her motivations before we decide how to handle this." I started by reviewing our recent conversations and text messages, looking for clues about what might have driven her to such an extreme action. What I found was a pattern of subtle manipulation that I had completely missed while it was happening. Comments about Marcus being too good to be true and suggestions that I was rushing into marriage had been sprinkled throughout our interactions for months. More troubling were the questions she had been asking about our financial situation. Evangeline had inquired multiple times about Marcus's job, our combined income, and even the details of our wedding budget. At the time, I had interpreted her interest as sisterly concern, but now these conversations took on a more sinister meaning. I decided to confide in my best friend Rachel, who had known both Evangeline and me since college. Rachel listened to everything with growing alarm, then shared something that made my blood run cold. "She asked me a lot of questions about Marcus when you first started dating," Rachel admitted reluctantly. "Specific questions about his background, his family, his job prospects. She also wanted to know if I thought you were settling for him. I thought it was just overprotective sister behavior. But now that you mention all this other stuff," Rachel helped me piece together a timeline of Evangeline's behavior that painted a disturbing picture. My sister had been systematically gathering information about Marcus and our relationship, asking leading questions to our mutual friends, and even doing what appeared to be background research on social media. The most damning piece of evidence came when I remembered that Evangeline had insisted on handling the seating arrangements for our wedding reception. She had specifically requested to place herself at the head table between Marcus's business partner and his older brother. At the time, I thought she was just being social, but now I realized she had been positioning herself to gather more information about Marcus's professional and financial situation. Marcus and I spent an entire weekend going through bank statements, credit reports, and financial documents looking for any sign that Evangeline might have been attempting some kind of fraud or identity theft. What we found was worse than financial crime. We found evidence of a systematic campaign to undermine our relationship. Hidden in my email spam folder were several messages from dating websites and social platforms that I had never signed up for. Someone had created profiles using my photos and personal information designed to make it look like I was actively seeking other romantic connections. The accounts had been created using an email address that was almost identical to mine, with just one letter changed. When I traced the IP address of these fake profiles through a tech-savvy friend, They all led back to coffee shops and public libraries near Evangeline's apartment. She had been creating fake evidence that could be used to convince Marcus that I was unfaithful, building a case that would destroy our relationship from the inside. The pieces started falling into place with horrifying clarity. Evangeline had not just drugged me at my wedding. She had been orchestrating a long-term plan to sabotage my marriage before it even began. The substance she put in my drink was likely meant to make me act erratically or inappropriately during the ceremony, providing Marcus with grounds to question my character or commitment. But her plan had a fatal flaw. She had underestimated both my resilience and Marcus's love for me. Instead of acting out during our wedding, I had simply appeared nervous and emotional, which everyone attributed to normal wedding day feelings. Her scheme had failed, but the evidence of her malicious intent was now undeniable. Marcus was furious when we pieced together the full scope of Evangeline's manipulation. She was trying to destroy our entire future together, he said, pacing around our living room. This is not just sibling rivalry or overprotective behavior. This is calculated psychological warfare. I felt a cold rage settling in my chest, different from any emotion I had ever experienced. This was not the hot anger of a moment. This was the ice-cold fury of someone who had been systematically betrayed by the person they trusted most in the world. The question now was what to do with this information. Confronting Evangeline directly might give her an opportunity to deny everything or destroy additional evidence. Going to the police felt extreme, but what she had done was certainly illegal in multiple ways. Then Marcus suggested something that made perfect sense. What if we let her think her plan is still working? What if we give her enough rope to hang herself completely? The idea of turning Evangeline's own manipulative tactics against her felt like poetic justice. We decided to set a trap that would expose not just what she had done, but who she really was underneath the loving sister facade she had maintained my entire life. The plan would require patience, careful acting, and perfect timing, but it would give us the definitive proof we needed while ensuring that Evangeline could never hurt anyone else the way she had hurt us. The next phase of our plan required recruiting allies who could help us document Evangeline's behavior while keeping our investigation completely secret. Marcus reached out to his cousin David, who worked as a private investigator, and explained our situation without revealing the full extent of what we suspected. David was immediately concerned when he heard about the drugging incident. "That is assault potentially with intent to cause harm during a major life event," he told us grimly. "If she was willing to do that, there is probably a lot more going on that you have not discovered yet." He helped us install discreet recording equipment in my apartment and showed us how to document our interactions with Evangeline without arousing suspicion. More importantly, he taught us how to gather evidence that would hold up legally if we decided to pursue criminal charges. Meanwhile, I had to continue acting normally around my sister while internally processing the devastating reality of her betrayal. The hardest part was pretending everything was fine during our regular Sunday dinners, sitting across from someone who had tried to sabotage the most important day of my life. Evangeline seemed unusually interested in how Marcus and I were adjusting to married life. She asked pointed questions about whether we were having any adjustment issues or if I was feeling different about my decision to get married. Her fishing for problems in our relationship confirmed that she was still hoping her plan might somehow succeed. "Marriage is such a big change," she would say with fake concern. "A lot of couples discover they do not really know each other until after the honeymoon period ends. Are you sure Marcus is everything he seemed to be during your engagement?" I had to bite my tongue to keep from confronting her directly. Instead, I started feeding her false information to see how she would use it. I mentioned that Marcus had been acting strangely about money and that I was starting to wonder if he had been completely honest about his financial situation. Evangeline's reaction was immediate and telling. Her eyes lit up with barely concealed excitement, and she began pressing for more details about these fictional problems. She even offered to do some research on Marcus's background to help me make sure everything was legitimate. Within days, she had escalated her manipulation attempts. She started sending me articles about financial fraud in marriages and sharing stories about women who had discovered their husbands were hiding debt or criminal backgrounds. She also began making comments about how I seemed different since getting married and wondering if I was really happy. The most disturbing development came when Rachel called to tell me that Evangeline had reached out to her with concerns about my mental state. According to Rachel, Evangeline had claimed that I was showing signs of depression and anxiety, and that she was worried Marcus might be taking advantage of my emotional vulnerability. She asked if I thought you might benefit from therapy or if I had noticed you acting differently, Rachel reported. She also wanted to know if you had mentioned having any regrets about getting married. It felt really invasive and weird. This confirmed our suspicion that Evangeline was building a case to present to our extended family and friends, positioning herself as the concerned sister, while painting me as unstable and Marcus as potentially predatory. It was a sophisticated gaslighting campaign designed to isolate me from my support system. David helped us trace more of the digital evidence, and what he found was extensive. Beyond the fake dating profiles, Evangeline had been systematically screenshotting my social media posts and creating edited versions that could be used to make me look unstable or unhappy. She had also been monitoring my online activity and gathering information about my daily routines. This level of surveillance and manipulation suggests someone with significant planning abilities and possibly some experience with psychological manipulation, David explained. Has your sister ever worked in fields that would give her these skills or shown these behaviors toward other people? That question led me to start investigating Evangeline's own history more thoroughly. I reached out to her college friends and former coworkers, carefully framing my questions as general curiosity about her past. What I discovered was a pattern of manipulative behavior dating back years. A former roommate told me that Evangeline had systematically turned their friend group against her by spreading false rumors and manufacturing conflicts. A colleague from her previous job mentioned that several people had quit after experiencing what they described as psychological harassment from Evangeline, though nothing could ever be proven definitively. Most shocking was a conversation with her ex-boyfriend from 3 years ago. He described a relationship where Evangeline had gradually isolated him from his friends and family, convinced him that his career goals were unrealistic, and ultimately manipulated him into financial dependence before suddenly ending the relationship and leaving him emotionally devastated. She has this way of making you feel crazy for questioning her, he explained. By the time I realized what was happening, I had lost most of my support system and my confidence in my own judgment. It took me months of therapy to understand that I had not imagined the manipulation. This revelation changed everything. Evangeline was not just a sister who had made one terrible decision. She was a predator who had been practicing manipulation for years, and I was her latest target. The drugging incident was not an isolated act of jealousy. It was part of a calculated campaign to destroy my life and potentially gain control over me the way she had controlled others. Marcus and I realized that our plan needed to be more comprehensive than just exposing what she had done at our wedding. We needed to create a situation where her true character would be revealed publicly in a way that would protect other potential victims and ensure that she faced real consequences for her actions. The opportunity came when Evangeline suggested hosting a belated wedding celebration for family and friends who had not been able to attend our ceremony. She volunteered to handle all the planning and insisted it should be a surprise event that she would organize as her wedding gift to us. Her eagerness to control another major event in our lives, combined with her pattern of escalating manipulation, made this the perfect setting for our counter-operation. We would let her plan her celebration, but we would be ready with evidence, witnesses, and a plan to expose everything she had done in front of everyone who mattered. The trap was set, but we knew we would only get one chance to execute it perfectly. Everything depended on timing evidence and ensuring that when the truth came out, it would be undeniable and devastating. The belated wedding celebration was scheduled for a Saturday evening at an upscale restaurant that Evangeline had chosen specifically for its intimate atmosphere and excellent acoustics. She had invited 43 people, including extended family members, college friends, and several of Marcus's professional colleagues. What she did not know was that half of those guests were now aware of her manipulative behavior and were prepared to serve as witnesses. David had helped us coordinate with several key attendees, briefing them on what to expect without revealing the full scope of our plan. Rachel Marcus's brother Jake and 2 of my cousins had agreed to help document everything using discreet recording equipment. We also had a uniformed police officer positioned outside the restaurant, ready to respond if the situation escalated beyond our control. Evangeline arrived early to oversee the final preparations, dressed in a stunning red dress that she claimed was meant to complement my outfit. She had insisted that I wear white again, saying it would be symbolic of renewing our family bonds after the stress of wedding planning. The irony was not lost on me. The evening began exactly as she had choreographed. Guests arrived to find beautifully decorated tables, an open bar, and a slideshow of photos from our childhood and wedding day playing on screens around the room. Evangeline had positioned herself as the gracious hostess, accepting compliments on her event planning skills and basking in the attention. During cocktail hour, I watched her work the room with the same calculated charm I had witnessed my entire life. She made pointed comments to various guests about how different I seemed since getting married, how overwhelming the transition had been for me, and how concerned she was about my adjustment issues. To Marcus's colleagues, she mentioned concerns about my stability and suggested that the stress of planning such an expensive wedding had taken a toll on my mental health. To my family members, she expressed worry that Marcus might not be the supportive partner I needed during this challenging time. Each conversation was carefully crafted to plant seeds of doubt about my well-being and my marriage, while positioning herself as the devoted sister who was trying to hold everything together. It was masterful manipulation, and if I had not known what to look for, I might have missed the subtle poison she was spreading. The moment of truth came when Evangeline called everyone to attention for what she announced would be a special toast to celebrate my new marriage. She had prepared remarks that she claimed would share some meaningful insights about our sisterly relationship and her hopes for my future happiness. As she stood to address the crowd, Marcus and I exchanged glances across the room. This was the moment we had been preparing for, and there was no turning back. David gave us a subtle nod from his position near the back of the room, indicating that all recording equipment was active and functioning. Evangeline began her toast with what appeared to be heartfelt sentiments about our childhood and the bond between sisters. She spoke eloquently about how she had raised me after our parents died, sacrificing her own opportunities to ensure I could pursue my dreams. The crowd was visibly moved by her apparent devotion and selflessness. Then she began to shift the narrative in subtle but unmistakable ways. She mentioned how worried she had been about my recent changes and how she hoped that marriage would provide the stability I apparently needed. She spoke about the challenges she had observed in my relationship with Marcus, disguising her manipulation as loving concern. As Serafina's older sister, she continued, I feel responsible for making sure she makes decisions that are truly in her best interest. Sometimes that means asking difficult questions even when they are uncomfortable. This was the opening I had been waiting for. I stood up slowly, drawing attention away from Evangeline and toward myself. The room fell silent as I walked to the front, my expression calm but determined. Thank you, Evangeline, for that touching speech about sisterly devotion. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the restaurant's sound system. Since you have brought up the topic of looking out for my best interests, I think this would be an appropriate time to share some information that I believe our family and friends should know. I could see confusion and the beginning of panic in Evangeline's eyes as she realized that the evening was not unfolding according to her script. She tried to interrupt, suggesting that this was not the appropriate time for emotional discussions, but I continued speaking. 3 weeks after my wedding, I discovered something disturbing in our wedding videographer's raw footage. Something that revealed the true nature of my sister's concern for my well-being. Marcus had already connected his laptop to the restaurant's display system, and with a few keystrokes, the slideshow of happy family photos was replaced by the video footage that showed Evangeline drugging my champagne on my wedding day. The reaction from the crowd was immediate and visceral. Gasps echoed through the room as people watched the clear evidence of Evangeline dropping something into my drink and carefully stirring it before I returned to consume it. Several guests pulled out their phones to record the shocking revelation, while others simply stared in disbelief. Evangeline's face went through a series of rapid changes: shock, denial, anger, and finally a cold calculation that revealed her true nature. Instead of showing remorse or attempting to explain her actions, she immediately began trying to control the damage. "This is obviously some kind of misunderstanding," she declared, her voice rising to compete with the murmurs of the crowd. "The video quality is poor, and you are clearly misinterpreting what you think you see." But I was not finished. David stepped forward with a folder containing printed copies of all the evidence we had gathered: the fake dating profiles, the manipulated social media screenshots, the documented timeline of her surveillance and manipulation attempts. I also discovered that Evangeline created multiple fake online dating profiles using my photos and personal information, I announced, holding up the printed evidence. These profiles were designed to make it appear that I was seeking extramarital relationships, presumably to provide grounds for destroying my marriage. The room erupted in shocked conversation as guests passed the evidence between tables, examining the detailed documentation of Evangeline's systematic betrayal. Several people who had received her manipulative comments about my instability began speaking up, confirming the pattern of behavior we had documented. Marcus took the microphone next, his voice steady and authoritative. "We also have testimony from multiple people who have experienced similar manipulation and psychological abuse from Evangeline in previous relationships and friendships. This is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern of predatory behavior that has been going on for years." The transformation in Evangeline was complete and terrifying. All pretense of sisterly concern vanished, replaced by a cold rage that I had never seen before. She looked around the room at the faces of people who now saw her true nature, calculating her options for damage control. "You have no idea what you have just done," she said, her voice low and threatening. "After everything I sacrificed for you, after all the years I spent taking care of you, this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in front of everyone we know." The mask had finally slipped, completely revealing the manipulator underneath. Several guests were now actively recording her response, capturing the moment when years of calculated manipulation gave way to naked hostility and entitlement. The immediate aftermath of the revelation was chaos. Evangeline made one final attempt to regain control of the narrative, standing in the center of the restaurant and demanding that everyone listen to her side of the story. But the evidence was overwhelming, and her previous manipulative comments to various guests had already been confirmed by multiple witnesses. My cousin Jennifer, who had been on the receiving end of Evangeline's concerns about my mental stability, stood up to address the room. She told me last week that Serafina was showing signs of serious depression and that she was worried Marcus might be taking advantage of her vulnerability. Now I understand that she was trying to turn me against my own cousin. Others began sharing similar experiences. Marcus's colleague Tom revealed that Evangeline had approached him at the wedding reception to express concerns about my erratic behavior and to suggest that Marcus should be careful about our financial arrangements. Rachel described the invasive questions Evangeline had asked about our relationship. Now understanding them, as intelligence gathering rather than sisterly interest. The weight of testimony from multiple witnesses created an undeniable picture of systematic manipulation that had been going on for months. Evangeline's attempts to defend herself only made things worse as her responses revealed more about her calculating mindset and complete lack of genuine remorse. "Everything I did was to protect Serafina," she declared desperately. "You do not understand how naive she is, how easily she can be taken advantage of. Someone had to make sure Marcus was worthy of her." "By drugging her at her own wedding?" Jake Marcus's brother asked incredulously. "By creating fake evidence to destroy her marriage. That is not protection, that is sabotage." The police officer David had stationed outside was called in when Evangeline's behavior became increasingly erratic and threatening. She began making accusations against Marcus, claiming he had brainwashed me against my own family and suggesting that the evidence had been fabricated to frame her. Her desperation was evident as she cycled through different manipulation tactics, guilt trips about our childhood claims that I was being ungrateful for her sacrifices, and finally direct threats about what she would do to make me pay for this humiliation. The officer took statements from several witnesses and examined the evidence we had gathered. Based on the video footage of the drugging incident alone, he informed Evangeline that she was facing potential criminal charges for assault and battery. The fake online profiles added charges of identity theft and harassment. "You have the right to remain silent," he began, but Evangeline interrupted him with a stream of vitriol directed at me. Marcus and everyone who had turned against her. Her complete lack of self-awareness or remorse was shocking even to people who had witnessed her manipulation firsthand. As she was escorted from the restaurant, Evangeline made one final attempt to hurt me. "You will never survive without me," she shouted. "I am the only family you have left, and when this marriage falls apart, you will have no one. No one will ever love you the way I do." The twisted nature of her definition of love was perhaps the most chilling aspect of the entire evening. In her mind, drugging me, attempting to destroy my marriage, and systematically isolating me from potential support systems was somehow an expression of caring rather than abuse. The guests who remained after Evangeline's removal were subdued but supportive. Many apologized for not recognizing the manipulation sooner, and several shared their own experiences with similar toxic family dynamics. The evening that was supposed to be Evangeline's stage for further manipulation had become an impromptu support group for people who had experienced psychological abuse. Marcus and I spent the next several hours talking with guests who wanted to understand what had happened and how they could help. The sense of community and genuine support was overwhelming after months of navigating Evangeline's calculated isolation attempts. David stayed to help us organize the evidence and coordinate with the police investigation that would follow. He also connected us with resources for dealing with the legal and emotional aftermath of exposing a long-term manipulation campaign by a family member. "This kind of systematic psychological abuse is more common than people realize," he explained. "The fact that it was perpetrated by someone in a position of trust makes it particularly damaging, but it also makes the evidence more compelling when it comes to legal prosecution." The restaurant staff who had witnessed the entire confrontation offered their support and provided copies of their security footage to supplement our evidence. The manager mentioned that they had noticed Evangeline's controlling behavior during the setup process, but had assumed it was normal event planning stress. By the end of the evening, we had statements from 12 witnesses, video evidence from multiple sources, and a clear timeline of Evangeline's manipulation campaign. More importantly, we had exposed her true nature to everyone who mattered in our lives, ensuring that she could never again use our shared history to gain credibility for her lies. The immediate aftermath was emotionally exhausting, but there was also a profound sense of relief. The weight of maintaining a relationship with someone who was actively trying to destroy my life had been enormous, even before I understood what was happening. Now that the truth was revealed, I could begin the process of healing from years of subtle manipulation and gaslighting. The legal proceedings that followed moved more quickly than I had expected. With video evidence of the drugging incident and extensive documentation of the identity theft and harassment campaign, Evangeline's attorney advised her to accept a plea bargain rather than face trial. She was sentenced to 18 months of probation community service and mandatory psychological counseling, along with a restraining order that prohibited any contact with Marcus or me. More satisfying than the legal consequences was the complete collapse of Evangeline's carefully constructed public image. Word of what she had done spread through our extended family and social circles, and several other victims came forward with their own stories of manipulation and abuse. Her former roommate from college filed a formal complaint about harassment she had endured years earlier, and her ex-boyfriend decided to pursue therapy to address the psychological damage from their relationship. The revelation also prompted several family members to reevaluate their own relationships with Evangeline. My aunt revealed that she had always felt uncomfortable around Evangeline, but had attributed her uneasiness to personality differences rather than recognizing the manipulation tactics. My cousins admitted that they had often felt guilty or confused after conversations with Evangeline without understanding why. Marcus and I used the experience as an opportunity to strengthen our relationship and build a healthier support system. We attended couples therapy to address the impact of the manipulation campaign and learned how to recognize and resist similar tactics in the future. The process of working through the betrayal together actually brought us closer than we had been before the crisis. 6 months after the confrontation, I received a letter from Evangeline through her attorney. It was not an apology. Even in counseling, she had apparently maintained that her actions were justified by her concern for my well-being. Instead, it was a list of demands for reconciliation, including requirements that I acknowledge her sacrifices and agree to family therapy with her. Reading that letter confirmed that I had made the right decision in cutting her out of my life completely. Her inability to accept responsibility or show genuine remorse made it clear that reconciliation would only provide her with new opportunities for manipulation. The most unexpected positive outcome was the relationships I developed with people who had witnessed the confrontation. Several guests reached out afterward to share their own experiences with toxic family dynamics, and we formed an informal support network for people dealing with similar situations. Rachel organized monthly dinners where we could discuss healthy relationship strategies and support each other through the challenges of setting boundaries with manipulative people. Marcus's family embraced me completely after witnessing what I had endured. His parents, who had always been warm but somewhat reserved, became fiercely protective and made it clear that they considered me their daughter, regardless of my biological family situation. His siblings included me in family traditions and inside jokes, creating the sense of belonging that I had thought only blood relatives could provide. A year after the confrontation, Marcus and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony with only the people who had proven themselves to be genuine supporters of our relationship. The contrast with our original wedding was striking. Instead of the elaborate production that Evangeline had tried to sabotage, this ceremony was intimate, authentic, and filled with people who truly wanted to celebrate our happiness. The renewal ceremony also marked the completion of my emotional healing process. Standing in front of people who loved me unconditionally, I realized that family is not defined by genetics or shared history, but by mutual respect, genuine care, and the willingness to support each other through difficult times. I occasionally wonder what would have happened if I had never discovered the truth about Evangeline's manipulation. Would she have eventually succeeded in destroying my marriage? How many years of my life would I have spent second-guessing my own judgment and accommodating her increasingly controlling behavior? The experience taught me that toxic people often maintain their power through the assumption that family loyalty should override personal boundaries. Evangeline had counted on my reluctance to challenge someone who had sacrificed so much for me, using guilt and obligation as weapons against my own well-being. Breaking free from that dynamic required accepting that love should never involve systematic efforts to undermine someone's confidence, relationships, or autonomy. Real family members celebrate your successes, support your healthy relationships, and respect your right to make your own decisions, even when they disagree with your choices. Today, my life is fuller and more peaceful than it ever was when I was trying to maintain a relationship with someone who was actively working against my happiness. The friends and chosen family members who surround me now provide the kind of unconditional support that I had mistakenly thought I was receiving from Evangeline. Speaking of family loyalty and justice, I would love to hear your thoughts on this situation. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you was working against your best interests? How did you handle the betrayal, and what did you learn about setting boundaries with toxic people? Drop your experiences in the comments below your story. Might help someone else who is dealing with similar manipulation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama and family justice stories. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear about the importance of recognizing manipulation and protecting yourself from toxic relationships, even when they involve family members. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel. Remember that you deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, and genuine care. Trust your instincts, protect your boundaries, and never let anyone convince you that abuse is acceptable because it comes wrapped in claims of love. Until next time, take care of yourselves and choose your family wisely.